Welcome to the Tower of London, everyone. I'm here waiting for the sun to set. I've set up my camera, I've found my composition. What I'm doing today is I'm shooting a panorama of the Tower Bridge, as well with the More London and the Shard. And what I want to do is take pictures as the sun sets and as the lights turn on as well during night. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to composite them in Photoshop to have the sunset and the lights on, which should make a pretty cool image. Excuse the headphones, but it's a bit chilly and I forgot to bring my beanie today, so I'm going to be wearing them. So the goal right now is to wait for the sun to set behind the buildings here and capture an image when the sun is right behind the Town Hall of London and in a sunburst mode, and then wait for the sky to turn red and then wait for the lights to turn on as well. And I'm going to be capturing about 5 or 6 images side to side to stitch a panorama, and I'm also going to be bracketing to do an HDR image so I can have maximum dynamic range. And to be able to stitch the panorama perfectly, I've leveled my tripod perfectly and I've manually focused on the Town Hall of London. And now we're just waiting for the sun to set. We have about 10 minutes before the sun actually sets where I want it to set, so until then I want to talk to you about how I actually found the location and know exactly where the sun is going to set. And I use an app called Sun Surveyor, and it has a great feature which is basically street view, but it shows you the position of the sun on the map on the time of the location where you want to shoot, so you can pinpoint very accurately where you want to be and how you want to shoot. So as you can see on the app, I can see that the sun is going to be roughly behind the City Hall, where it's going to be touching for me to be able to get that sunburst. So the final shot I actually want to get is one of the most challenging shots I've ever tried to make, because I have to basically do one panorama with the sun touching the buildings, one pano with the actual sunset and the colors of the sunset, and then one pano during blue hour with all the lights lit up, and make sure that they all match perfectly so that I can overlay them in Photoshop and then use every layer that I can to basically get the image that I have in my head line up in the final image. I'm not sure if it's actually going to work out, but I'm going to try my best. If not the final image that I want in my head, maybe I'll get a cool sunset image. Okay, the sun is slowly approaching the buildings, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot 3 panos, one with f16, one with f18, one with f22, and so I can take my pick of the starburst that I like. I'm going to have to move fast because it's going to be setting quite fast. Got my camera set to aperture priority. I'm shooting with a manual white balance so I don't get any flickering on the colors. Like I said, the tripod is perfectly level so I can rotate the camera without having any issues with the perspective. I've got my bracketing on to -1, 0 and +1 for the exposures. Obviously the time will be automatic because I've got an aperture priority mode. My ISO is set to 100 so I can have minimal noise, and I'm using a remote trigger to avoid any shake while taking the pictures. I also have the camera set to a timer with the remote trigger so it can take the 3 exposures from the bracketing automatically, which is always nice, so I don't have to press the button 3 times. It's almost time, so I'm going to start taking pictures now, just because there's light on the bridge and I don't want to miss that. And remember, when you're shooting panos, always shoot wider because you're probably going to have to crop in a bit in post. So here we go. I think I got the shot I wanted with the starburst, well, the sunburst. And now I'm going to keep on shooting throughout the evening so I can capture the best light possible. Basically, there is some nice light going on the bridge right now, so I'm gonna take another panel, and then I'm just gonna wait until the lights turn on in about an hour and a half. Hopefully it all fits together. I have no idea if it will, but I'm hopeful. Okay, the sun has gone down now and the light is pretty nice. We have orange colors everywhere, so I've taken the next panel with the light that I want to be the base color, and where I'm gonna overlay the sun flare. and then overlay the city lights as well. My prayers have been answered. We have some clouds that caught the light of the sun. I was really worried that it would just be completely clear skies, which I'm not complaining. It doesn't really happen in London, so I was like, I can't complain. But now we have clouds, which is quite amazing. So. All right, the lights have started coming on, so it shouldn't be too long now. And it's a good thing because it's actually freezing now, and I'm kind of shaking from the cold. So probably another half an hour until we finish the shoot. So now I've removed the bracketing from the camera. I've got f11 so I can have a wide depth of field, and so everything is in focus. And maybe I can get some slow shutter and get the river to be nice and smooth. And I'm gonna shoot the pano again, and I'm gonna overlay the lights on the previous panorama. Future Andreas jumping in real quick to tell you what I learned from this shoot and what I would do different in the future. The image that I got is pretty much what I had in mind. However, it's not quite perfect. Not everything aligned as I would hope, and there's a few reasons for that. So first lesson that I learned is that Lightroom and Photoshop actually don't stitch panoramas the same way every time that you do them. So I shot many panoramas over that evening, and I decided to use 5 of them for my final image. And even though my tripod didn't move at all during the time that I was shooting, the images didn't stitch up the same way. And that's because Lightroom and Photoshop use an algorithm that changes every time that you stitch, even if it's the same images. Even if it's the same panorama, it's going to stitch it the different way every time. So what that meant for me was that I couldn't just stitch all the panos and then overlay them in Photoshop. I tried that and it didn't work. They were totally out of place and they didn't match up. So what I could have done to make this process a lot easier is actually use a panorama head, which is basically a prop that you put on your tripod that offsets the camera so that the center of rotation is actually the center of your lens. And these heads also have set degrees that you can rotate your camera, and it kind of clips into place rather than going free flowing like I did. So that would have meant that all my images were exactly lined up and the same. And then I could have just stitched every image independently, make them the way I wanted, and then put the final panorama together at the end, which is actually what I did this time around anyway. But because my actual photos didn't match up perfectly, I had to auto-align them in Photoshop, and there were still edges that just didn't match up. I tried to work with masks and transforming things around to make it as perfect as I could. But yeah, if you zoom in real close, you'll see that some lines don't actually match. If I were to do this again, I would definitely buy this tripod head because it would have saved me a lot of hassle. Also, I would have liked to have shot the individual images in vertical so that I would have a lot more pixels. The reason I didn't do that is because my computer is 8 years old and I don't think I could have handled it. It actually really suffered. It took me about a week to stitch all the HDR images and then stitch them into panos that I later found out that wouldn't line up in Photoshop, and then redo the process in Photoshop from the beginning. So yeah, it turns out I did bite off a lot more than I could chew, but with perseverance, hard work in Photoshop, and lower expectations, I got an image that I'm actually quite happy with. And I know that if I want to do a similar thing in the future, I will have to go and buy this panorama tripod head, because trust me, it would make my life a lot easier. So if you would like me to make a tutorial of how I actually made this shot from beginning to end, click on the little eye icon up there and vote on the poll, yes or no, and I'll be happy to make an extra video on that. And if you guys like this video, give me a like and let me know in the comments, and consider subscribing for weekly videos. And hey, go out and make some pictures, and I'll see you next week.